All right, so this is actually super exciting. So as you know, this trip, Antarctica, has been on my sort of bucket list for a long time, and so Cameron Herold, so most of you know Cameron. One of his innovations is this notion of a vivid vision of like writing down what do you really want your business to look like, feel like, be like. And one of the things that I wrote down was Jimmy Buffett in Antarctica, and we talked about that already. But that was the impetus for this trip. Like, who in their right mind would sign a huge and it's a pretty damn big contract to go to Antarctica during this time? But that was the impetus. And then Cameron was, I think, one of the very first people I reached out to and talked about it. And he's like, oh my God, I wanted to do this for so long, and I have the spreadsheets. Take a look at what I did already. And then and he also shared with me that on his own personal vivid vision was to speak on all 7 continents. So this is going to be continent number 7 that Cameron gets to speak at. So we're going to help fulfill an amazing vivid vision. So Cameron normally charges $40,000 for a keynote, $10,000 for a Zoom keynote. Those are not like made up prices; they're like real prices. Someone legitimately pays you that every once in a while.
All the time.
Yeah. It is all the time.
Price of $500.
Yeah. So Cameron and I met. I don't know how many years ago. 8, 9.
2007, 2008. Tim Ferriss introduced us.
Yeah. So Cameron was at Tim Ferriss's house, I think, or Tim was at Cameron's house, and Tim was like, "You need to check out this guy Yannick. I feel like you two would be friends." And Cameron's like, "Yannick?"
I thought it was a car. What's a Yannick Silver?
And he's like, "Wait a second," and he pulls out the Globe and Mail, which is the Canadian paper, and he's like, "This dude?" And we're actually in the same article.
The day before.
Like how wild is that? Like that, we love magic, and this is, so that's where Cameron and I became really great friends, and ever since we've continued to stay connected. And Cameron is just incredible. Like in his personal world before, he was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, helped them grow to 105 million, no investors, and Brian Scudamore, who was the CEO of it, used this vivid vision process. So that's where Cameron really got incredibly skilled at and helping entrepreneurs plus COOs take that vision and apply it. And he has a presentation for us, which is nothing with that. It's actually a brand new and very amazing and topical for where we are. So with that, Cameron Herold.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was the summer of 2007 that Tim and his brother Tom were up at my home in Vancouver for the weekend, and he said, you must know this guy Yannick Silver. And I said, what's a Yannick Silver? And so I said, the rest is history. I've been paid to speak now in 26 countries on 6 continents, and Antarctica has been a dream of mine to come here since 1997 when my grandfather gave me the book Endurance. I've had every franchisee at 1-800-GOT-JUNK read the book Endurance back in 2000, so I've been obsessed with coming here for a long time. And what I wanted to talk about was something I've never talked about publicly before. So this content was written over the last 3 weeks while we've been traveling through Chile with my fiance and I actually found out we had a TV when I got on board and saw that it was a good setup, so I decided to even do a slide deck while we were on the boat. So this won't be my normal perfect presentation because I didn't really have all the bandwidth, but it's going to be great for all of us, hopefully. And the theme is related to us being at the bottom of the world. Now, I also realize that some of you have no idea who I am. A few of you do, but I had the name Cameron a long time before she did. I live part-time in Vancouver, but mostly this is my home. I travel now around the world with my fiance Ashley, and we're both living out of those backpacks. I heard Kanye West say that his house is his backpack and his home is when his kids FaceTime. That's starting to be the way that I feel as well. I've spent a lot of time with entrepreneurs all over the world. It's all I've ever known is being an entrepreneur, so I understand our DNA. I've also been a bit of a serial entrepreneur, but obviously not that kind of serial. When I was 21 years old, I got involved with a company called College Pro Painters, and that was where I learned how to actually run companies. When I was 21, I had 12 full-time employees. After being with that company for a number of years, I became the co-founder of the franchising group for Boyd Auto Body and Glass, which became known as Gerber Auto Collision in the US. It's now the largest collision repair chain in the world. We built that company up. Then I was hired as president of a private currency company, similar to what Bitcoin is doing today, but we had a private currency from 97 until 2000, we had 30,000 companies using our electronic debit and credit system instead of the US dollar. So we had Starwood Hotels, Avis Rent-A-Car, Budget Rent-A-Car, Hard Rock Cafe, the Rob Report, all using our digital currency 23 years ago. We sold that company for $64 million. Unfortunately, we sold for stock in January of 2000, and the stock market crashed. And once we were able to actually get out of the stock, we were worth about $3.2 million. So that $64 million, we lost $61 million in valuation over a period of 3 months. So what do you do when you pretty much lost everything? You become a garbage man. So I joined my best friend, Brian. My parents thought that it was the biggest mistake that I was going to make. Brian had 13 employees. I was the 14th employee when I walked into his business after building a company up to 900. Why would you go become a garbage man? But I really understood and believed in his vision. When I left 6.5 years later, we had 3,100 employees system-wide, and I had been the COO for that entire growth. So we grew from 2 million to 106 million. We had no debt. We gave up no equity. We ranked as the #2 company in all of Canada to work for. We landed 5,200 stories of our company in the press, individual unique stories. We did it without giving up a single penny, and we had a great company culture. So what I became known for was building amazing company cultures. Some of the brands that you'll see up here, I've coached the CEO and or the COO. So I actually coached the CEO of Sprint, Marcelo Claret, who went on to become the CEO of WeWork after they crashed. He's on the board of SoftBank. He's on the board of Google. I coached Marcelo. I coached his COO. But everything I've coached these companies on was how to build world-class company cultures. And for me, it does not start with an org chart like this. Most of us were taught that this is what our company's organizational chart is supposed to look like, with the CEO at the top. And I've always believed and always visualized that the CEO should be at the bottom of the org chart. Right? Our job as the CEO is to support the executive team who are supporting the managers, who are supporting the frontline employees, who are supporting the customers. So I've always visualized the business that way. And then I think about the two sides of the pyramid. The one side is your core values, and then your other side is your core purpose. And your job is to make sure that you keep everyone aligned inside your core values and your core purpose. When I met Yannick back in 2008 and met Sophia around 2011, one of Yannick's core values, I believe at the time, was "and wait, there's more." And every time I've ever encountered Yannick and been at one of his events, there's always these little surprises that they bring in, to the point that yesterday, the disco, that was a wait, there's more, and he didn't even know about it. His team had kept it a secret from him. That's how much that core value is inside their DNA. Sadly, that he didn't know that, so he was sleeping and decided to take a break from the group. But that's what we're going to talk about today, is how we as the CEO can be at the bottom of the org chart. For me, the CEO does not stand for Chief Executive Officer. It stands for Chief Energizing Officer. Because our job, Randy gets it, our job is to infuse energy into the organization. I've also always visualized every company like a jigsaw puzzle. Right? So remember when you were a kid and you were given a jigsaw puzzle? Where did you start with that puzzle? The edge before the edges. Right, the 4 corners. So for me, the jigsaw puzzle starts with those 4 corners. And when you're building your organization from the bottom up, the obsession of the CEO is to first align every single employee with your vivid vision. That 4 or 5 page document that describes every aspect of your company 3 years in the future. You only lean out 3 years in the future. The Vivid Vision is now a registered trademark of mine. It's being used all over the world. Tens of thousands of copies of the book Vivid Vision being sold. Mind Valley has it on a quest up on their main platform. But the idea is to align everyone so that they can see what you can see, right? Because most of us as entrepreneurs can see our company, but no one can read our mind. It's like a homeowner who wants to build a home. If I went to the best contractor in any city, let's say Austin, I grabbed the best contractor in Austin, I said, build me my dream home. Here's $3 million, I'll be back in a year. Build the dream home, that's your vision. I'd come back and they might build something, but it wouldn't look anything like what I was thinking about. You have to sit down with that contractor and keep sharing your vision until they can draw the plans to make your vision come true. Well, the CEO, if they're telling people what to do, you're not focusing on aligning them with the vision of what you're building. So that for me is the first corner of your jigsaw puzzle. The second corner is the term that Jim Collins came up with, the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. Most people do it wrong. They say 1 million tickets or 1 billion whatevers or 1 million somethings. By definition, that's not a BHAG. The BHAG is the big, hairy, audacious goal. It's something that is so big that it's a 20 or a 30-year push that you're focusing on, that aligns your team, and from the outside world, they think of it as impossible, and from the inside, you think it's plausible. So my BHAG is to replace vision statements with vivid visions worldwide, right? From the outside, that seems crazy, but it's a 20-year, 30-year push that's starting to actually take fold. When the CEO of Sprint writes a vivid vision and shares it, it's kind of starting to kick in a little bit, right? So Adidas' BHAG back in the early 70s, or sorry, Nike's BHAG in the early 70s was to crush Adidas. Boeing's BHAG was to democratize air travel. Microsoft's BHAG was put a computer on every desktop and in every household, and they didn't even make computers. It's not 1 million somethings or 1 billion whatevers. So you have to think about your BHAG and keep people obsessed with your BHAG as the CEO. That's an aligning force. And then you think about your core purpose, right? What's the reason for you getting out of bed? We all know Simon Sinek with his book, Start With Why. Simon was on our board of directors at 1-800-GOT-JUNK 4 years before he wrote that book, 5 years before he did his famous TEDx talk. So we had the benefit of understanding core purpose. My core purpose is helping entrepreneurs make their dreams happen. It's everything I do is aligned with that core purpose. It's how I say no to things, it's how I say yes to things, and it's how my employees understand why we say yes to things and why we don't. And it allows them to grow the company for me and make decisions like I would without me having to hold them accountable. And then the last one is your core values. They should be easy to understand phrases. They should never be a single word. Single words are confusing. You should have a maximum of 4 or 5 core values, and you should be willing to fire people who break your core values. That's the test. The only time I've ever allowed one of my clients to have a single word as a core value, he had the word simplify. And I'm like, shit, that's perfect. Right? That was the only time I've ever said a single word is actually perfect. But that's the aligning force that we need to start with to actually scale our organization. The second thing that I do when I'm thinking about building a company and supporting the team is I visualize all my employees as climbing up 2 ladders. So imagine if you had 2 ladders right beside each other, and on the left ladder, your left hand and your left foot were climbing up, and on the right ladder, your right hand and your right foot were climbing up. Your left foot is skills, the right is confidence. More skills, more confidence, more confidence, more skills, more skills, more confidence, more confidence, more skills. If your confidence is shaking, there's no way you're doing anything with your skills. If your skills are shaking, you're not getting any more confidence. Our job as CEO is to grow people's skills and to grow their confidence. The more that you obsess about growing your employees' skills and confidence, the more they grow. And lots of us here are involved in organizations like EO or YPO or Mavericks, and we're focusing on growing our skills. But if you focus on growing your team skills and you focus on growing their team skills, like everywhere above you in the org chart, that's when you really supercharge the organization. I taught a client that I was coaching from 40 people up to 700. I coached them for about 5 years. Became the #1 company to work for in Florida, Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year in Florida, president of the YPO chapters. And he said, I taught him this one system. And he said, wow, that's going to change the whole company. I said, no, it's going to change your productivity. What will change the whole company is if you teach all of your key employees that skill. So our job is to grow people's skills and then focus on growing their confidence. So how do you grow people's skills? One way is to actually put in place a personal development plan, but not the ones that we were taught and not the ones that we typically use. Most of those personal development plans the employees hate. What I want is a personal development plan that they co-create, that they're excited about, that help them with their career, even if that means helping them leave to go work somewhere else. If they believe that we're there to help grow them for their skills, then they get bought in. Another thing that you can do is to actually find a group of next-gen leaders in your organization and mentor and grow them as the CEO. Not your direct reports, but maybe 2 or 3 layers below you or 2 or 3 layers above you, and you focus on how do you grow those people? How do you actually, as CEO, spend time with those next generation leaders? I was identified as one of those at College Pro Painters, And Greg Clark, the CEO, who was technically 2 or 3 layers above me on the org chart, groomed me and mentored me. I ended up becoming in the top 30 people of an 8,000 person company because he identified me in the early days as a next-gen leader, and that's really what supercharged my career. But I reported to a guy who reported to a guy who reported to Greg when Greg mentored me. He also mentored Scott and Tony, and the 3 of us went on to become presidents of his companies. So when you look for those next-gen leaders, that's you growing people's skills and their confidence, and that reverberates throughout the whole organization. Start a book club. These are 5 of my books. I'm working on my 6th book right now. Show TED Talks. You don't even have to show entire books. Take a chapter of a book and have some of your employees just read a chapter. These are not novels. You don't have to read them front to back. My first book, Double Double, I tell people, just read like 3 of the chapters. Entrepreneurs read chapters 1, 2, 4, 6, and 12. Why don't you have your employees focus on just that, or give them 6 pages to read? Don't give them a 300-page book, especially when you've only read the cover. The best part about learning when you give them a book to read or a video to watch is have them do a 5-minute book report later on, the next week, about what they learned from the book. Because it's not sitting down making sure that they're actually reading it, but it's actually making sure they're absorbing it and buying into it. Find some consultants to teach them. Whether you bring in a consultant into the organization or you get somebody remote to do it over Zoom, the more that you can grow their skills, the more you grow the organization. Send them to conferences. One of my clients, a guy named Chip Mock, had an unlimited budget for his 200 employees. He sent 16 people to Tony Robbins one year. He sent 30 people to another industry conference. He had his COO in my COO Alliance. He had people being coached. He sent people to Gazelles for Vern Harnish, like 8 of them. He spent about $2 million on company training one year. But he was also buying his second G5 when I was coaching him because his organization had grown from about 4 locations to 35 locations in 3 years because all Chip did was focus on growing the team instead of holding them accountable and telling them what to do. Find them mentors, right? Every single person on our executive team at 1-800-GOT-JUNK had a mentor. I was being groomed by the incoming COO at Starbucks was grooming me. Every month we did a 1-hour call. Every quarter I went down to Starbucks head office or Greg came up to our head office. Our head of IT was being mentored by the head of IT from Business Objects, head of finance. We all had mentors. But by plugging your team, by you helping to plug mentors in for your team, supercharges your organization. At College Pro Painters, we had what we called the Dot Parade. We had 16 different skills that we wanted to grow people in, and then we would certify them as bronze, silver, or gold in that skill. If they were bronze, they were competent. Silver, they were a role model. Gold, they were good enough to certify anybody else in the organization at that skill. So you could have a receptionist who was trained in time management. If she was certified gold, she could certify a VP on the time management skill. You look for ways to bring learning into the organization and create virality. You can build all these systems or you can plug in, there's courses that exist. I launched a course last year called Invest in Your Leaders, the 12 core skills that all of our managers and leaders need to grow our companies. Just a quick question. How many of you have managers inside of your company, managers or leaders, right? Almost all of us. How many of you have trained all of your leaders, all of your managers on how to do job interviews? 1 of you, 2 of you. How many of you have managers and leaders that do job interviews? All of us. Business isn't difficult, we overcomplicate it. You have people doing interviews without being trained on it. How many of our managers run meetings? All of us. How many have trained people how to run meetings? None of us, right? 1. So the key is to give them the skills to do what they're doing. One of my clients said, meetings suck. I said, no, meetings don't suck. You suck at running meetings. Because he'd never trained. He had 700 employees. He'd never trained them on how to attend them, how to participate at them, how to run them. We would never send our kid off to Little League Baseball without teaching him how to hold a bat or catch a ball or throw a ball. We'd give them the basics. Otherwise, our kid would come home from Little League and say, baseball sucks. No, Johnny, you suck at baseball. In the learning that we bring into our organization, there's a cycle that I learned about 20 odd years ago on how adults actually learned. The first stage is when we learn the abstract concept, okay? The abstract concept, when you're talking about learning. The next stage is the active experimentation, the practicing, the trying it out. The third stage is the concrete experience of doing, and then you go back to the reflective observation, talking about and thinking about what you learned, and then you continually repeat the cycle. So as an example, one of the modules in my Invest in Your Leaders course is on interviewing. So people will do the pre-test, they'll fail. They'll watch the content, they'll read the content, they'll do the post-test, they'll pass. They'll talk about it, maybe role play it in the company, then they'll actually start doing it. Then they think about it, they go back and watch the videos again, and they keep the learning cycle going. Make sure that anytime you bring learning into your organization, you bring this into the learning as well. In addition to the obvious, right, the visual, the auditory, and the kinesthetic styles of learning, you need this cycle as well. So then how do you grow your people's confidence? Growing your confidence is all about making sure that they think they can and that they know they can, and then by cheering them on. So there's a lot of things that we can do inside of our organization. The first one is praise. Praise, 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 praise. Like praise way more than we do. None of us as entrepreneurs tend to praise our team anywhere close to as much as we should. I had a CEO one time, he said, well, of course they know I like them. Of course they know. Like, would you ever say, like, how often do you tell your spouse or your partner that you love them? Once a quarter? Like, Ashley knows I love her, maybe once a quarter, right? I'll let you know in April. No, it's constant, right? Because then if you have the fight, at least you've built a base for grounding that they know that you love them. Your employees, you're constantly giving them more to work on. You're constantly showing them areas to improve. The praise has to be 2 to 3 or 4 times as often as the new projects and the criticism that we give them. I look for core values call-outs, just constantly reinforcing and thanking people for living the core values. Thanks for role modeling a core value. Getting leadership team members to thank other members of the team at every meeting for living a core value. Calling out core values and thanking people for those at daily huddles, over Slack, over videos. The more that you actually praise people and thank them for living that stuff, the more it infuses inside the organization. High-fiving people, high-fiving them in public, high-fiving them over Slack, high-fiving them using something like 15-5, but constantly reinforcing and praising and thanking. Look for opportunities to celebrate everything. Celebrate every project that gets done, celebrate every goal that gets hit, celebrate every little random act of kindness that you can, and looking to praise people twice as often as you criticize people. I mentioned the whole partner and how often you say I love you. You're not going to necessarily walk up to employees and say I love you, but often you will. I've got 2 or 3 guys that work for me and I'm constantly saying, dude, I love you. And it comes across so well for the way that it's being received with them. A little system that I've used for myself over the years is anytime I set 3 new goals for myself, I try to find 3 things I just got done that I can say thank you to people for. If I set 3 new goals for the week, I try to find 3 things we just got done that we did well. One of my new team members, she's our community manager for the COO Alliance, she gave me a list of things that she could do better on her first call that she'd done with our members. And it was a list of 8 very applicable things she could do better. I was like, well, what did you do great on the call? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, tell me, give me a list of the things you did great. So she came back and she gave me 6 things she did great. And I said, from now on, don't ever tell me all the stuff you have to improve unless you also tell me the things you did great. That alone changes the trajectory. So it's us as leaders constantly looking to grow their skills and to grow their confidence. Now the next thing I do is just show you a quick video. And this is something that John Ratliff, who I coached years ago, who's a maverick, put in place based on a speaking event that I taught him in 2007 that was hosted by EO at the MIT offsite. It's called the Entrepreneurial Master's Program. And we were talking about how to really care for our employees. And John took the idea from the Dream Manager program and merged it with the Children's Wish Foundation and created something to really show his employees how he felt about them. So I'm going to show you this 3-minute video and then we'll wrap and just turn into a little bit of questions.
I'm Emily Ratliff, and I'm the Director of Employee Experiences at Poultry.
We were looking for ways that we could really drive the employee experience. And somebody said, well, what if we took the Make-A-Wish charity model and we kind of provided that model for our employees? How they would actually
I wanted my daughter to have an extravagant birthday party. After my wife unfortunately lost her job, we weren't able to provide that for my daughter, so I submitted a dream.
Emily called me and told me, she's like, Lisa, I experienced a dream, and I was just in complete shock. I started crying.
Water is completely water. I was overwhelmed. I didn't think it would happen.
One of my top 3 things that's ever happened to me.
My mother is she's terminally ill, so my dream was for my family to take me on a trip. What they gave me something I remember forever. To see my mom smiling once again, like she had no care in the world, which is the most amazing feeling I ever felt.
You know, you go back in the history of your company, you look for moments that are game-changing or pivotal. It's one of those moments we can look at and say, wow, our company changed that day and really changed forever.
My husband was diagnosed with cancer, and a girlfriend of mine on the floor heard about the situation. And I was like, oh, he only wants to just see eagles. So she submitted a dream that he wanted to meet the eagles and he wanted to see them, and that somebody would do that for Dan. He was diagnosed in August of 2008, and he was told it was terminal, that he probably wouldn't see Christmas. Then this just brought him up, you know, and it gave him hope. I didn't tell him everything that was going to happen. And then the team comes out after the game and shaking his hand, and it was great. It was kind of like you didn't think about him being sick that day.
Opportunity Dream On experience is giving my family something that otherwise may have not been attainable.
It made me want to be a better person.
I look back every day to look at the photos, and it's an amazing feeling.
It's changed me pretty fundamentally to be that much in touch with what our people have to go through sometimes.
Or why I wanted to cover it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Greg? So the way he awards it is based on kind of the Children's Wish Foundation idea is people submit their dreams, and then he just finds people whose dreams are meaningful, and they're people who have kind of done something inside the organization, but it's not a meritocracy based. It's more just like a wow based. So that guy who was sick, it's a really interesting story about this guy who was sick. The one who went down to the Philadelphia Eagles game. One of the M&A team watched that happening and said, did that kid have issues with his dad when he was young? And they said they think so, and they checked in on it. And he said, I want him to talk to a counselor. Turns out that a lot of his illness had been self-induced. He's alive and well 15 years later. And it was because the M&A guy had identified something, and they were treating it for a terminal illness, and this guy was actually getting worse because of the treatment, and it turned out that it was something else that was inside of it. So yeah, it's not meritocracy based, it's just more, yeah, heartfelt. Any other questions on stuff? Yeah.
What's a good small step that we can immediately apply when we get back home?
Yeah, what's a good small step? Praise. Thank. Like, I think as entrepreneurs, we're often so driving for this little project or that little goal or this big win or that. Like, praise twice as often as you say, do more.
Really good job, Cameron. This is a good speech.
There were only, thank you. There were only ever, in the time that I was being mentored by Greg at Starbucks, had only ever been 3 CEOs. So there was Howard Schultz, Howard Behar, and Orrin Smith. And Howard Behar, every Friday for 2 hours a week, which is technically 5% of their week, right? 2 hours divided by 40-hour work week, probably 2 divided by 60 as CEO. But call it 5% of his week. Every single Friday for 2 hours, he hand wrote thank you notes. Now, Howard didn't know who to write thank you notes to, but every Friday a spreadsheet was put on his desk with a stack of thank you cards and a stack of envelopes already pre-addressed, and Howard would look and it'd be like, store number 12, the record on Frappuccinos. Store number 12, congrats on your Frappuccino record. So impressed, blah, 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 love you, Howard. This person worked for us for 12 years. Kelly, congrats on your 12th year with Starbucks. Really love that you're with whatever, Howard. And he spent 2 hours every single Friday. They had 11,400 stores, and the CEO is handwriting thank you notes for 2 hours a week. None of us are even close to that. So we can't say that we don't have time. It's that we're not focusing on the shit that really matters. When all we do is focus on saying thank you and praise and gratitude, and we obsess about the core values and core purpose, and we keep aligning people with our vision, and we keep trying to grow their skills, it just gets easy. And by the way, you can do that from anywhere. You can be sitting here doing stuff like this every day for the rest of your life, coaching your team, lining them up with mentors, praising them, thanking them, cheering them on, and you don't have to be there running the company anymore. But they have to know that we'd go through brick walls for them as humans, and then they'll go through brick walls for us with the company. Other questions? Yeah.
It's interesting as the way we start working post the pandemic, for example, and it could be something European, but we help healthcare professionals to implement innovations in any sense. And it's nothing to do with the IT. It's very much culture change management. It's very much how this can be operationalized to sustain it. And what we see is we often need to jump into an environment and literally work with teams and managers and be their chief execs or COOs for a period of time in very kind of not intimate relationship, but equally have to rapidly start creating that environment, that trust, these values, so we can make things happen and help them implement innovation. What would be your shortcuts when you want to inject some of this into an environment when it requires very quick turnaround, but equally very powerful and deep relationship in order to make this happen?
So I had this exact discussion with Marcelo Claret. So I identified Marcelo. Marcelo became the CEO of Sprint. He'd built his first company, Brightstar, to over $1 billion, sold it to SoftBank. It was the largest Hispanic-owned company in history in the United States. I met him on a flight. We were both sitting in economy class, and I identified him as having Tourette's, being ADD, and being bipolar. We became very quick friends, started coaching him a year later. I was in his boardroom in Kansas City, and we were talking about this same issue. And I said, Marcelo, you have to be human. You can't come in. He's never worked for a telco in his entire life, and he was appointed by Masa to go into Sprint to turn it around and then execute the merger with T-Mobile. That was his entire role. Largest profitability in history under Marcelo the year before they merged. So his whole thing was, how do you humanize that with your team? Because he had people working for him that were like 27-year execs, inside of it. I said, they have to know you as a person. They have to know your family. They have to know your vulnerabilities. They have to know your passions. And the same way as a coach of a team, one of the things I worked hard with Marcelo on was he was very hard as a driver, drive. And I'm like, he also owns the Bolivian soccer team. I'm like, if any of your coaches were ever drive, and they didn't praise and cheer them on and high five the players, what we'd do is I'd fire them. Then he's like, oh, fuck, you're right. Like, we have to just be human. So I think if we actually talk to them about what you're struggling with, talk to them about your vulnerabilities, talk to them about your passions, laugh a little, have fun a little. And as soon as you do that, they connect with us as humans, and then they open up with their areas of business. But if we try to be all business, all professional all the time, we don't ever make that human connection. At the end of the day, none of this shit matters. We're all gonna die, right? And for every employee that works with us, this is just what they do to make money. So if you want them to go through brick walls to build your company, they have to realize that you care about them as a person. The day that I met Marcelo, after the flight, when I went to say to him hi for the first time, I went up to give him a hug. He was 6'7", and I realized it was this big awkward hug, and I hugged him, and he kind of stepped back, and he's like, "No one's ever done that before." I'm like, probably because you're this huge man, right? And secondly, it's because you're the CEO of the 82nd largest company in the United States. And then he started laughing, and he goes, "But I loved it," right? And I was like, oh shit, did I just screw this thing up? But that was something I took from my first year at Burning Man, was I just don't like shaking hands anymore. So if you can just, and I do it with women, and it crosses every political incorrect boundary, but I'll tell you what, I've walked up to women at I go to the main 5-day TED conference every year. We'll be there again in April, and I'll meet the CEO. I met, you'll know the name, I met Jim Lauder, and I was sitting talking to Jim Lauder, and then his wife comes up, he's like, "Estee, come over here." I'm like, "Estee, like Estee Lauder? Like, what the fuck?" I meet Estee Lauder, and I give Estee Lauder a hug. Like, when you just meet people and you treat them as a human, that's where the connection comes from. And then they know you care. Any other questions?
Is there a time limit on the hug to Estee Lauder?
She was, yeah, she wasn't my type. She was like probably 80. She's a little 80. Yeah. Yes, yes, it's okay to moan and rub. You just, yeah, just rub a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I'll show you later. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for letting me speak. Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, gang. So, thank you.
You're welcome, buddy. Thank you.
Oh wait, no, sorry. What's a keynote without a check? Not quite as much as.
Nice. Thank you. This is,
Cameron is a paid attendee, by the way.
yeah, this is actually technically makes it accurate that
Exactly.
I've now been paid to speak on all 7 continents. I got paid $222 to speak. That's amazing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's got to be official.
That's the best check ever.
If you frame it, you don't have to cash it that way. You just add it to our P&L.
I'm going to cash it digitally and then I'll frame it.